When the Affordable Care Act was passed, our government was arguing that there was no religious freedom in the place that most people spend most of their waking hours of their lives when you're engaged in a for-profit business. This new Affordable Care Act was telling them, you either violate your faith and provide these abortion-causing drugs to your employees, or we're going to destroy you. As I was growing up, one would say I was very shy. I always liked to be at the back of the room. It was difficult for me to get up and do an oral book report as an example, and the teacher would say, well, you have to, or you'll get an F. I said, well, this is an easy decision. I'll just take the F, but I'm not going to get up in front of the class.
David, he is a master merchant. He's a merchandising genius. Few of those left.
I didn't do well in school at all. Didn't go to college. I'm not proud of that, but I didn't. I was more interested in getting down to the dime store and working and having fun there.
He became educated in these stores, and I don't think there is a merchant like him in the country. I mean, he lives it and breathes it. He does the very best he can do for a customer. There's three things that I really love, and I love those three things so much that it's not important to me to get outside of those three things. I love to work. I love to work. And then I love to go home and be with my wife. And I'm so comfortable being with my wife. And I'm comfortable going to church. Every week, never miss. I love it. Outside of those three loves, I don't have time for any other love because those are such great loves in my life. And so I really don't have a lot of activity outside of those three areas. When I was in high school, I had an opportunity to work at a five and dime store. Within a short period of time, I knew that I enjoyed that. Laying counters out, putting together displays, watching things sell when I changed them from one display to the other. There was just an excitement, and of course, coming from a poor family, I think just getting paid for doing something and where you had very little was a part of that whole process of, hey, I can get paid to do this, and I love to do it at the same time. I was born into a pastor's home, and I had 5 brothers and sisters. My father and mother were so geared to the fact that we have one life, soon it shall pass, and only what's done for Christ will last. And so I grew up knowing that I had to do something of eternal value. My brothers and sisters were all called to either be pastors' wives or pastors, and I found myself early on as I got married and I was in retail. I really felt like I was the black sheep of the family, and felt like that there was something wrong, that God didn't call me to be a minister, a pastor, or an evangelist, or a missionary.
For him, it was a bit of a struggle. God, am I not good enough? And that was a challenge for him. And my dad knew that wasn't his calling.
We started making small frames in our garage in 1970. My 2 boys were gluing these frames together. They were 7 and 9 years old. We paid them 7 cents a piece to put these frames together.
Yeah, God represented cars, and college to me. Cards, because I bought my first baseball cards by myself with the money that I made selling frames. My dad wasn't going to buy a car, so I bought a car, and he wasn't going to pay for college, so I paid for college. So to me, it was a very practical place.
My wife worked for the first 5 years for nothing. Without my kids, without my wife, we wouldn't be here today.
My dad got 2 days a month off. He got every other Sunday off. And that's part of the reason he wanted to start Hobby Lobby is to see if he could maybe build a business that he wouldn't have to work every other Sunday. And but when we started Hobby Lobby, he had to keep that job. So he didn't run the business. My mom did. And so we all honor her her, because without her efforts, none of us would be here. And so she made that sacrifice. And for the first 5 years, she got zero pay. At least I got 7 cents a frame, and then I got minimum wage once I started working.
The first store we had was only 300 square feet, about the size of a small living room. And so we had to have a lot of ingenuity when we had $600 to build this company. A lot of times people says I was underfinanced, but sometimes we're overfinanced because we overdepend on finance to build our business rather than sometimes ingenuity.
One thing you need to know about David Green, he is so courageous. There's times I just think he's almost crazy. He was one of the first importers that said, I need to cut out all these middlemen and go direct to China. Back then, 27, 28 years ago, to fly over, no one does that. He paved the way for retailers, in my opinion, to go direct. I believe he started with one store in 1972. Today, we are in 47 of the 48 contiguous states, close to 700 stores, and have analyzed the country and determined that we can put in about 1,200 stores today. So we are working to expand into those 1,200 locations.
In 1986, there was 85 and 86, there was kind of an oil bust. Things had been going well, so we had positioned ourselves for growth.
We started selling luggage, we started selling ceiling fans, gourmet food, stuff that you wouldn't normally have in the arts and crafts creative space. And so, but things were going so well in Oklahoma that the customers wanted that, and we did that. Well, then going back to the mid-'80s, the reverse happened. We had a real bust, and so all of a sudden people weren't buying those kind of things.
We received a letter from our bank that really was threatening to foreclose on us. Obviously, it was a very stressful time for our family, so we actually asked the family to come together, and we said, we may not have a job, we may not have this company.
My sister works there, my brother works there, I work there. Me and my brother had just been married. I have a couple children. He's probably close to having his second child. We're all depending on this business.
And we were also concerned about a lot of employees, so it was a very, very difficult time for us. Probably the end of this conversation with my son Mark. He says, hey Dad, we're not depending on you, we're depending on the Lord for our future. And so from that, a lot of weight came off of my shoulders. Says, look, it's not about me, it's about God, and just leaning on Him and asking Him to help us through these times. So I found myself under my desk day in and day out, just in prayer, just asking God what He wanted us to do, and what were we doing wrong, what could we do different. And I think from that I really found out that I was very, very prideful of what we had accomplished at that point. So for me it was a good thing at the end, because if I was prideful with 12 stores at the time, how could I handle 700? So I tried to learn from that time, and I'm still trying to learn on a daily basis that it is God that gives us our blessings, and that we need to give Him the credit and the glory for all the things that He's done for us. When we first started our business, we started it not opening on Sundays. And we had a competitor that started raising literally hundreds of millions of dollars to expand their craft store. And they sent kind of messages to us that they were going to bury us with their money. And so we got scared, and we started opening on Sundays. It obviously shows that we were not really trusting God the way we should trust Him. We're trying to run this company based on biblical principles, yet we're open on Sundays. And we had people that wanted to go to church on Sundays, and we were keeping them from it. So that was when we decided to close on Sundays. But I didn't have the faith to do it all at once. And so what I did is I started by states. And over about 18 months, the last state was Texas. Everybody says, oh, the Lord's going to bless you, but it wasn't showing up on the numbers, It was, we were losing sales during those periods of time. It seemed like it was when we were completely obedient after we closed those Texas stores that we saw a turnaround. And of course, since that time, we're a very, very healthy company.
From the first day I started working at this company, I never worked a Sunday. As a matter of fact, if you thought you had work you needed to get done on Sunday, you weren't even allowed to come in to do it.
I would say the average retailer is open at least 100 hours, if not more. And then you have those that are open 24/7. They're never closed. They don't even need keys to the stores anymore. And so I think at 66 hours, we're very, very unique. In fact, I don't think there's anyone of our size that would be open only those amount of hours. Closed at 8 o'clock at night, not open on Sundays. We don't come in after Thanksgiving at 3 o'clock in the morning. We don't open on Thanksgiving. So it's really important to us to care about the families and the hours of our employees. We tell them that their family is more important than this job. That in our lives, we feel like serving the Lord is the most important thing. And secondly is their families.
Pretty pushy as far as making sure his people get proper time off. It's easy to say leave your problems at home, but that just isn't life. When an employee is struggling at home with their finances, with their spouse, with their kids, we want to have a resource that they can go to help them.
Here on this campus, we have over 4,000 employees, and we have classes of all sorts. We have given the Dave Ramsey course to over 2,000 individuals here that are being paid while they go to those classes. We also have, I think it's 6 now, chaplains. So we have chaplains that will help those individuals in the store as well as all of the employees that are here on this campus.
We get our health care here at the corporate office with no deductibles. What company furnishes a clinic at their corporate office? There's not very many. There are employees that have gone that might not have gone otherwise, and things have been caught that might not have been caught. So it's exciting to be able to provide medical help that we do for our employees.
We want to be Christ-like in how we pay people, how we care for people. All of their problems that they have, we want them to bring those to us. And so we want to care for our people as Christ would care for them.
David decided to raise the Christmas bonuses for our employees. That happened in 2009. Prior to that, we were paying $30 per year for every year of service. So if you had an employee that had been with you 10 years, they would get $300. When he made that change in 2009, that same employee ended up getting $1,000. We had people literally crying when they got their checks because they had no idea that was going to happen. The following year, the first part of the year, he raised the minimum wage to $10, and then he's raised it every year since then to our current level of $15.24.
And it really surprised us. We did not increase salaries to strengthen our company. We did it because we wanted to help our employees. But it just so happens that it also strengthened our company.
During those first years, we were focused on just succeeding, keeping our doors open. But at the same time, we knew that we were a light to our employees, that we needed to treat them well. We may not have been able to pay much more than minimum wage at that point, but we still wanted to do the best we could for them. But it wasn't until we had established our business and that we had become more profitable that we were able to see that we could do more for our employees.
We found out we were attracting the kind of people we wanted to attract, people that cared about their family, people that of integrity. And so we've had little to no pushback from the employees that we have, which is over 30,000, by being a Christian because they see us as caring about them.
There's not been one person in my years in retail, in my years in life, that it bothered that I cared about. David Green, the Green family, they care very much about our employees, and it didn't lip service.
We had one young lady that was not eating with the rest of us, and she was in the conference room, and we went and said, "Why are you not eating with us?" He said, "Well, I can't eat that food." And she says, "I'm a Muslim." And we said, "Very, very sorry. We'll never let this happen again. We'll make sure that we have the food for anybody in that environment." And we just loved her, which we should love everyone. We have found out that this is a good business model. We don't want to do it because it's a good business model. We want to do it because as Christians, it's where we should be. We should love and care for our employees. But it just so happens, as we give more of our resources and more of our income and more of our profits to our employees. That it just so happens that it's very, very good for business to care about your people. Our longevity of our people is much greater than it had been at first when we first started and weren't able to do as much. But now we feel like we have people that are coming here to work and care and fight for us as we fight for them.
Hobby Lobby already covers birth control for its employees. Its issue is with the requirement in Obamacare to cover emergency contraception as well. The company, Hobby Lobby, objects to 4 drugs: the morning after pill, Plan B, Ella, and 2 forms of IUDs.
In our country, people have all kinds of different beliefs on when life begins. We happen to believe that life begins at conception. And so we felt it was a violation of our religious liberties to be asked to pay for something that we felt took a life.
And at the time, there was other challenges in the court system to the whole healthcare law. And so we said, well, we don't know if it's going to really impact us or not.
But it finally came to the point where, well, no, this is what's going to happen. The government is going to require us, in our belief, that life begins at conception, that there's a DNA that's happened at conception that has never been before and never will be again. And they were asking us that we were going to have to pay for these prescriptions, and we knew as a family that just could not be, that we just could not do that. And we knew that at the same time that if we didn't do that because of the numbers of employees that we had on our insurance plan, that it could cost us as much as $1.3 million a day.
The fine was $100 per day per affected individual. There, I believe, is probably some question as to exactly how that would be calculated. But based upon the number of individuals that were insured on our health care plan, that could be as much as $1.3 to $1.7 million a day. During this period of time, our plan is growing, so the more people we have in our plan, the higher our fine would be. So it's $100 per employee per day, so we're looking at $1.3 million a day. That's pretty substantial.
And at that time, we decided that we just had to here again call the family together. And we do that when we feel like that something's going to happen that affects all of us. As before, when we felt like we were going to lose our company, we brought our family together. We knew that this could cost us our company as well.
We actually met at my home. My dad asked me to call a meeting, so I did. So we brought Gen 1, that's my mom and dad. Gen 2, my brother and sister, our spouses. And then Gen 3, between me and my brother, we have 10 children. And those who are probably 18 or older came.
And I asked the youngest to speak first. And I wanted to be the last one to speak to see how the family felt.
It was a bit surprising that something of this sort was ahead of us because we're a craft store, Hobby Lobby's craft store. So it was kind of a little bit of a weird thing to enter into.
It wasn't a decision that we were chasing after. We weren't trying to make a splash in culture. We were just faced with the decision of, okay, what's the right thing to do, and how do we serve our employees well?
The thought that came to my mind was the story of Daniel. The first time when he was challenged, it was to eat meat that violated Jewish law. And he appealed, and the problem was averted. He was allowed not to violate his conscience. The second time, Daniel was told that he couldn't pray to his God. And in that case, he had to face the lion's den, and God showed up and got delivered. But I thought there's a third option as well. Sometimes that God allows people to go through suffering. Stephen was stoned. Job didn't lose it all. The disciples, all but one of them, lost their life. Christ did die on the cross.
Sometimes we don't know. We were called to obey. Sometimes the outcome through obedience is tough. There are tough results to obedience.
The consensus, and by the end of that meeting, what we're talking about is like there's really no other choice but for us to follow the Lord and what we believe about life.
And I was so proud of them that they had the same heart. There was no conversation of how are we going to pay for these, but what can we do not to pay for these prescriptions?
So we said, well, if we have to, it's not our preference. We don't want to do it. We honor our government. We live in a great place. It was because we have the kind of government we do that we're able to be successful in America. But at the same time, now we're being asked by that same government that we do respect and want to uphold to do something. And so we felt like our only choice was to sue and ask that we not do this.
When we came out of the meeting, we all knew that it may cost us the company. In fact, one of the comments the strongest comment was from my son Stephen. He says we have to be willing to give up this company.
Whether it was averted or delivered or suffered, I just had a sense that whatever God's plan was, we were in good hands, whatever happened. And there was a certain peace in knowing that we were doing what we knew was the right decision.
It may be God's will that we give up this company. That if it served Him best, then that's what we wanted. Not what served us best, but what would serve God best. And so that week we came out of the meeting, everybody knew that we had no promises that we could keep our business.
The Greens had no recourse whatsoever. They were facing ruinous fines. There are times when you have to go to court. I know that the Apostle Paul said, "Why are you suing one another?" But guess what? The Apostle Paul also invoked litigation. Right? He said, "I appeal to Caesar." One of my favorites as a lawyer. He appealed to Caesar. He could have just said, "Well, I can't litigate." No, he didn't say that. He said brothers shouldn't be litigating with one another. So the government forces were arrayed against the Apostle Paul. He used his legal remedies.
And that's exactly what Christians are called upon to do. So I applaud the Greens for saying, we don't want to do this. Please don't make us do this. You're making us do this. We have no alternative but to go to court.
This was really one of the most outrageous sort of overreaches by the federal government against religious freedom in the history of our country. The Solicitor General argued that once you decide to go into a for-profit business, you are making the decision to waive your religious freedoms. And quote, "You now play by the government's rules." Nothing could be more the opposite of why this country was founded. It was founded on religious freedom.
The Greens became objects of very severe criticism, and they're sincere Christians who are holding their beliefs. So there was a certain backlash. But that's where we are in the culture today. That you say, "Well, I have a religious freedom right." Well, then I don't like religious freedom.
As a woman in the family, to hear other people saying that we dislike women, it was frustrating, and there were times that I would just have to. I took a Facebook sabbatical, just necessary, because there are a lot of people that would say something. But there's great understanding for the value of women within our family, and within our family, there are a lot of women that have a great strength in who we are. And I think my grandma, she's this rock within the family. My grandpa's a rock in my family. My grandma is a rock in my family. There's not a one is better than the other. One has worked harder than the other. I mean, it's understood that Grandpa has a deep love for Grandma, and Grandpa dotes on Grandma. And I've always seen women having a lot of worth and value, not any more than men or less than men. God created them both equal. Life is valued. Women are valued. And they come from the same source, God's Word.
Our country was very divided on this issue. If you saw the polls, about half the people favored, about half the people didn't. 10% were very passionate about it. 10% were very, on both ends and stuff. And so I said, we became zeros to 10% of the population and heroes to another 10%, and the 80% just kind of life went on, even though they had their opinions and stuff. So for the most part, for our family, we just said the best thing is just to go on, not to make comments about it, and let's just let the process take care of itself. Through the entire litigation, that family did not have a plan B. I had no earthly idea what we were going to do. We lost. I was still working on ideas, but I can't begin to tell you the number of employees or people that would come up to me and ask me, "If you lose, what's going to happen? What are you going to do?" I often prayed for David as the leader of this family. I just can't fathom the burden with the 20,000+ employees that rely on this company for their livelihood. I marvel at his faith.
For my wife and I, it was almost terrifying. But it was a very short time after that we had peace. And people would come up to us and say, wow, this has got to be difficult, And we just said, no, we're at total peace. And we really contributed that to the prayers that we were receiving from all over the world.
I was at a meeting, I believe it was in Singapore, and I sat next to a guy, he's from India, and he sees my name tag, he goes, oh, Mark Green, well, how are your kids doing? How's Brent? He knew all four of my kids' names, all this stuff. I was a little spooked, to be honest. I'm like, wow, how come you know all this stuff? And he goes, wow, I'm following your case, because what happens in America, it affects me in India, because what you guys do has ripple effects and stuff. So I've been praying for you and your family. And so I told people we were probably there for a while, maybe the most prayed for family in the world. And so that's quite affirming. We believe in the power of prayer. And so to know that the world was praying for me was very encouraging. And so we were able to walk with peace through the process, knowing that we did all that we could. We were standing for what we thought was right, and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
We had one decision, right or wrong, and we made the right decision. So that was one of the reasons why I think we were at peace. Because what else could I have done?
When we sued the government, obviously we had no idea that it would wind up going to the Supreme Court, but slowly but surely it went to one court here, one court there, and through time and Providence, it wound up that our case was taken. I was working feverishly to figure out how we're going to do this. Are there any options for us if we were to lose that we could live with? And nothing. I mean, I tried, and I'd visit with the family, and we could never, there was just not an acceptable alternative. And at the end of the day, it was either win or lose. And if it was lose, I think we were just going to have to sit down and figure out what's next.
We knew our case was probably the very last decision for the Supreme Court because it was one of the largest decisions that they had to make for that year, if not the largest. And so we were at the last hour, the last day that the Supreme Court met for that year. We were the case, and so we were in the conference room as a family sitting there waiting.
It seemed like the decision was probably going to be 5-4, one way or another. So you don't go in full of confidence because 5-4 is close. You're down to one vote. Which way is it going to go? I kind of consider myself maybe a little bit of the business historian. So I had cameras and photographers in there to film the moment, because this was something that was, well, as we all know, it's historical not only for this company but for this country. So I had this on film. We were all sitting around the table watching the news feed, and it was a very convoluted opinion.
I'll read part of that decision for you now. The Supreme Court ruled today that closely held companies cannot be required to pay to cover some types of contraception.
We saw 5-4 in our favor. You know, it was a time of rejoicing for our family.
The God we serve is able to deliver us. And He delivered us. We were all just very thrilled that God had delivered us.
There was a great sense of joy.
I think there were some shouts out of the room there at the corporate office, and just gratefulness, a sense of pride in our country, and the fact that we continue to stand for the religious freedoms that our founders originally gave us.
Lots of tears, and we all stood up, and of course, Barbara led us in prayer. And it was just a beautiful moment. And simply put, the Supreme Court ruled that closely held corporations have rights under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which means they can claim religious rights under the First Amendment. We didn't win anything that we didn't already have, because the First Amendment gave us that. I wouldn't trade the experience for anything in the world. To see the strength of the Green family, the unwavering strength, changed my life.
At the end of the day, the win was for the unborn.
This was
all about
not winning and losing with the government.
It was all about life. It was about the unborn that we felt like that God would have us to protect. I think God gives all of us a talent, and some of us 5, as the Bible says, some 1, and so forth. I think He don't gave me one, and I recognize that I'm a merchant, and I don't take credit for that. Whatever we have in our talents, God gave them to us. My mother and Dad had good intentions because they wanted us to do something that was eternal, but I just don't think they understood that we could also be in ministry outside of being a pastor or an evangelist. And so it was very, very difficult for me, and I just felt like I was a second-class Christian.
As he started the ministry side of our business and started giving and saw God using that, it became very real to him that he was where God wanted him.
Of course, now I know I'm in my calling, and God has called me to do this. But when I think back on it, I think that my calling was whatever. Sometimes we're worried about what God wants us to do. And I think He's more concerned about how we do it. I think Scripture tells us whatever that your hands finds to do, just do the very best you can, and do it as unto the Lord. I think it's in that environment, in that obedience that we find out what God has for us eventually, down the road, ultimately. But I don't think we will find it necessarily if we have a job that we're not doing the very best we can, because that is not what we feel like God calls us to do.
I appreciate the fact that He has learned from that for us, and none of us have really ever been pressured or pushed to become something. It was more freedom to say, what is God calling you to do? You go do that and be the best you can.
When I come to work now, I know that I have a calling on my life. In fact, I tell my wife sometimes, I feel God's anointing on my life. So I think as a merchant, I can have the same anointing coming to work as a pastor in the pulpit.
Here is the best way I can tell you the values of this company.
One day I got a call from our CFO, and we were having managers meetings. He said, well, one of our chaplains was telling her story and giving testimony and doing an altar call, asking people to accept Christ in their life if they would. And he said, Peter, I think you should know about this. And obviously, as a lawyer, my antenna go up, and I immediately called our executive vice president of operations and said, look, we need to get together with David. We need to talk about this. I'm with you and parade forwards, if you will. And I said, this could cost us millions of dollars in legal fees and lawsuits. And David calmly listened to me the whole time. And after I was finished, he looked at Ken and said, Ken, how many of these managers have given their life to Christ so far? And Ken said 8. And David looked at me and said, I appreciate you doing your job. But can you tell me, what's the price of a soul? Well, at this point in time, tears are running down my face, and I just stand up and shake his hand and say thank you. I just need to let you know that's the values at Hobby Lobby.